morning and welcome to our kitchen. I'm Nancy Ostresh. My partner Gordy had to bow out for today. She'll be back. We're working on program number 258, and I have a main course and a dessert that I'm doing today. My main course is orchard pork chops, and my dessert will be best Bangor brownies. Now I have a little story I can recite or read. The recipe book I used a couple of recipes out of is Dishing Up Maine. I grew up going to Maine for 1 week vacation with my family, and I still go there. And picked up this cookbook. And this is about the best Bangor brownies. Theories abound, but Jean Anderson, noted food historian, speculates that the story about brownies having been invented by a Bangor, Maine housewife in the early 20th century, and it carries a ring of truth. It seems that the lady in question baked a chocolate cake one day, and when it didn't rise, instead of chucking it out, being a frugal Mainer, she cut the collapsed cake into squares and served it. It was an instant success. So this recipe that I'm going to do produces a brownie that is more on the fudgy side than it is cake-like. And it's based on one in the good old New England tradition. And this is another cookbook my mother had, the Fanny Farmer baking book. But this author she has added a secret pinch of black pepper, which is almost undetectable, but serves to enliven the taste buds ever so slightly. So we're going to find out. Another thing that Mainers say that they invented was the Whoopie Pie. And so a lot of good things come from Maine. So I've started over here in a saucepan. I've melted 1 stick of unsalted butter, and I'm going to take it off right now, and I'm going to add to it 2 ounces of unsweetened chocolate. Now it can be the squares, or in my case I had the packets on hand. And I want to add that to the butter. And I want to mix it well. Okay, turned off the heat, and since I only have 1 whisk, I'm going to have to wash this off. Okay, I'm going to another bowl here. I have 2 eggs, And I want to put in 1 cup of sugar. A teaspoon of vanilla. Quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Just 1/8. So hopefully I'm just going to put 1/8 in. Okay. Now I want to whisk that together. Then I'm gradually going to whisk in the melted butter and chocolate. Just make sure you don't cook the eggs. Okay, now, when does the flour come in? Because, the next thing it said is directions is to 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts, if you like nuts. Some people don't like nuts, so it's optional. And now, I'm going to sprinkle 1/2 cup of flour over it and gently whisk that in. And I've kind of tried to get lumps out of it and fluff it up. to have to be patient, a little at a time. I think sometimes by the time you get to the end, you get a little impatient. Let's get this over with. Okay, that's it. So that you don't want to see any white specks in your batter. Now I'm going to pour it into a 8 or 9 inch square pan, and I have buttered it or sprayed it with the shortening. Goes into a 350 degree oven. For 25 to 30 minutes, and then you want to check it with your tester. It'll be a little more difficult because it's not going to be a cake texture, it's going to be more fudgy. There, 25, 30 minutes. Okay, on to the main course. Okay, over to my orchard pork chops, and you can kind of tell when we're filming these. It's fall time, and we try to incorporate some of the fall vegetables and fruits, and I'm going to use pork this time. And I already, a couple of hours ago, in a suitable dish, I had 1.5 cups of apple juice or apple cider. I used apple cider. And 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, only 2 tablespoons. And 2 cloves of minced garlic. And I put into marinade 4, these are not bone-in, but you could do bone-in or boneless. I prefer bone-in pork chops over boneless. These happen to be center cut and they are boneless. So, in this large fry pan, I'm going to put a reasonable amount of vegetable oil, not a lot, and we're going to brown them, the pork chops. on both sides for, well, it says until you feel as though they are cooked through. So while that's going on, we will break until I get these cooked and continue on with the recipe. Okay, while the chops were cooking in the fry pan, browning on both sides, and I salt and peppered them, I cut up a large apple, your choice. Actually, I had two medium-sized apples. Chopped them up and have been sautéing them in a tablespoon of butter to soften them for about 5 minutes or so. Now I'm going to add the marinade that I used with the pork chops in the beginning. I didn't throw it away. I did take out a quarter of a cup. I'm going to add the marinade to the cooked apples. And I want to bring that to a boil. Meanwhile, I'll put the cooked pork chops, keep them warm, of course, on a platter. And we'll bring this to a boil. In this small dish here, I have the quarter of a cup of the marinade and a tablespoon of flour and a quarter of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. You know, I like the grinder as opposed to the powder, which I and you probably realize that with the flour and this mixture here, I'm going to pour it into the apples and the rest of marinade and simmer it to thicken the apple mixture. And as you watch to try and get it to boil, keep raising the heat, and then it gets too hot. This will hopefully gradually get to the thickness that we desire. Then it's going to be poured over the chops and served. My best Bangor brownies are out of the oven, cooling down. And when we come back, we will be at our table. Welcome back to our table. This is show number 258. It's being filmed in the fall, so I picked out a recipe for the main dish, orchard pork chops, which denotes using apple. It was a pretty simple recipe to put together. Pick 4 pork chops of your choosing. bone-in, a boneless, whatever you prefer. I prefer the bone-in when I cook pork chops, but these are boneless. And I marinated them for 2 to 3 hours ahead of time in 1.5 cups of apple juice or apple cider. I used apple cider. And 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and 2 cloves of garlic. And so the pork chops are marinated in that for 2 to 3 hours. And after that, you heat up a large fry pan with some vegetable oil and brown them on both sides, salt and pepper them for 6 to 8 minutes on each side till you feel that they are already all cooked through. Now, in a separate fry pan, smaller one, I cut up 1 large or 2 medium apples of your choice and sauteed them chopped up in some butter, about a tablespoon. And then I poured the leftover marinade, don't get rid of it. I poured the leftover marinade into the apples and brought it to a boil. Before that, I had taken out 1/4 cup of the marinade and mixed it with a tablespoon of flour and some cinnamon, and added that to the apples and marinade, and so that you would get a thickened sauce to put over the pork chops. And this is what they look like. There's plenty of sauce to go with the pork chops. So hopefully the pork chops that I picked will be tender enough that we can enjoy that recipe. My dessert was Best Bangor Brownies, and behind it I have the recipe book that I had picked up in Maine, and that recipe came out of. And the claim in the cookbook is that years ago, 100 years ago, a housewife was making a chocolate cake, and when she baked it up, it didn't rise. And being the frugal Mainer that she was, she dished it up like it was, and it became the fudgy brownie, and it was a big hit. So it was pretty easy also to put together, because I needed a stick of butter that I melted with 2 ounces of unsweetened chocolate, either the cubes or I had the ones in a packet. And then in a separate bowl was a matter of whisking up a couple of eggs, some sugar, vanilla, salt, and pepper. This was what the little secret thing was in that recipe, was a little bit of pepper to liven up the chocolate. Then the chocolate is added to the egg mixture and whisked in completely. And if you like nuts in your brownies, add 1/2 cup of nuts, and then sprinkle and gradually mix in 1/2 cup of flour. Get that all mixed completely, and then pour it into your 8-inch, 9-inch pan and bake it. Checking it after 25-30 minutes, hoping, because it's going to be a fudgy, not a cake brownie, and then you cool it in your pan. This is my choices for this fall show, and if you like any of these 2 recipes, you can send a self-addressed stamped addressed envelope to Dalton Community Television, 151 Park Avenue, Dalton, Mass. 01226. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.